All right, let's start. Thank you very much for joining another Into the Block webinar where we try to discuss some of the hottest topics in terms of crypto, DeFi, data science, trading, and all the areas that we work on as part of the Into the Block platform. Today, we have a very exciting topic. We're going to be talking about sort of the latest updates in Maximal Extractable Value architectures. There has been a lot of activity in the space. We use a lot of that as part of our quantitative strategies, and what we want to do is to bring some of those, discuss some of those new ideas, such as the SUAVE architecture, the MEV share proposal, and some ideas around privacy, and relate that to high-frequency trading fundamentally in DeFi. So we have a lot of ground to cover. And we try to keep this webinars on the 30-minute mark, so I'm going to go relatively fast. If you have questions, feel free to use the Q&A panel, and I'll stop multiple times during the presentation to take questions. Before that, let me give you the traditional update about Into the Block, because a lot has happened in the last 3 weeks since our last our previous webinar. So we have launched quite a few new integrations with customers in our analytics product. So the crypto app, that is one of the most popular apps in crypto, I believe today, launched a series of analytics powered by Into the Block, which is great that they're bringing this level of intelligence to their retail audience. We also are super excited to launch with Solvo. This is a team that we know from Revolut, and we're part of our partnership with Revolut, and they launched a new company, Solvo, to enable easy access to digital assets, and they immediately reached out to incorporate Into the Block marketing intel. So very happy to partner up with those guys. And then this is a release that was a pending item that we had to cover. So we supported Cardano early in the days of the Into the Block platform, very passionate community. We had some hiccups with the data sets that we were using, and we promised the community that we were going to fix it, and we did. So we rebuilt an entire ETL pipeline to capture data from Cardano and process our analytics. So Cardano analytics, over 300 signals are live Into the Block today. Go check it out. And obviously that community is super happy with us. But then probably the most important announcement of the last 3 weeks is the preview. This is a very early alpha preview of a new product line called the DeFi Risk Radar. Is to, as the name indicates, is to monitor economic risk in DeFi protocols. This is the type of analysis that we use in our quant platform to protect capital at a scale in DeFi strategies. So we want every party facing DeFi to have access to the same factors that we use. So we put a couple of protocols, Euler and Benki, so people can test with. But when you go there, you're going to find a lot of very, very in-depth indicators and signals, things such as the health factor distribution, bad debt in lending protocols, addresses are doing liquidations, blocks elapse between liquidations. So very, very in-depth analysis that I believe you cannot find anywhere else in this market. Is a type of risk models that we need to put in place to protect capital, and now we're making it available to everyone. So go check it out. We're still a couple of months away from releasing a complete version of this. We have partnered up with quite a few DeFi protocols, a lot of asset managers on this. So check it out and give us some feedback. So with that, let's go on to the topic today that is about maximal extractable value. So I'm going to start with doing a recap of where we're at in terms of the MEV evolution until now. Obviously, this is one of the most debated topics in crypto, so some of this might be familiar, but I can guarantee you that the second section of this presentation is going to be all new stuff. So MEV, it was initially coined as minor extractable value because it was described as a value that miners in proof of work blockchains could extract from any given transaction. Eventually, given that proof of work was not the dominant architecture in the space, it was rebranded as, renamed as Maximal Extractable Value. And one thing about MEV is that I always like to make the differentiation between good MEV and bad MEV. So MEV is an omnipresent component element of blockchains. Is something that we need to coexist with, is something that is unlikely to go away. I sometimes refer to it almost as entropy. Like you can move it from one place to the other, but you're not going to get rid of. You can move energy from one place to the other, but you're not going to get rid of it. So even some of the MEV mitigation solutions that are in the market are highly unclear where they're really mitigating MEV or just shifting the MEV somewhere else. But there is a differentiation between bad MEV and good MEV. So some things like normal arbitrage, the arbitrage that you use in AMMs to restore the balance on pools and all that, that's very benign MEV. You can even make the case that arbitrage that look into between CeFi and DeFi just for pure financial gains, not even to restore the balance on a component of an MEV protocol, is just financial opportunity, nothing else. But then the MEV that is very damaging to blockchains is when you start manipulating the blocks, when you start holding transactions and not placing it in the right order into the block and things like that. I believe that's what is that's the MEV that we need to try to address. As a solution path, there are multiple ways in which you can address this, right? Typically today we're mostly focused on solutions at the node level, right? Like things like MEV Get, MEV Boost, like clients that are at the node level provide some level of MEV mitigation. You can move to a level down at the protocol level, and some of the proposals from Flashbots are going down that path. And ultimately, you can think that a lot of these MEV mitigation protocols could be embedded, right, as part of the blockchain consensus mechanisms, which poses the question of, if that's the case, what's going to happen with all these MEV clients. So in proof of work blockchains like Bitcoin, obviously, and the previous Ethereum miners, had a lot to say in terms of MEV. Now, obviously, that power has transferred to validators in proof of state blockchain. So one taxonomy, one area that will help us a lot to understand MEV architectures is to understand what the team from Flashbots, that is obviously the most active research hub in this space, what they call the MEV supply chain. And these are the different components that typically exist in an MEV ecosystem. So at a high level, there are 5 key components, the building blocks that we can identify: user and wallets. Those are very self-descriptive, and then we have these three components: searcher, builder, and validator. So most MEV architectures today have those 3 components and maybe a few others. So the miner, right, the proof of work version of MEV was based on the fact that you could monitor mempools. The searchers will identify opportunities and they will submit those opportunities directly to the miners with some payout, and the miners will evaluate that to place those opportunities in different orders in the block, in a specific blockchain block. The dominant client for MEV extraction in proof of work blockchain was MEV Get, that was created by Flashbots, in which you have multiple searchers, right? Parties that identify MEV activities, MEV opportunities, but monitoring mempool. They will send transactions to a component called the relay, and the relay will build the blocks and send it to the architecture of the block and send it to the miners. But then that architecture, like if you look at this, it assumes a very trusted relationship between the relay and the miner. So a few months ago, almost a year ago, Vitalik proposed this idea of separating the roles of proposing a block with building the block. right? So you could propose a structure of the block, and then another entity would identify if that block has a structure that they will agree with, and then build it. That way, the way this works is the proposer will issue a structure in which the builder will have we'll see the signatures of the different transactions of the block, but not the entire transaction. So they couldn't do any algorithms to manipulate the block in any way. So following this design principle, the team from Flashbot built this thing called MEV Boost, that is a partial implementation of the proposer builder separation pattern, in which you have the full components of the MEV supply chain, like the block builder, the relayer, and the searcher. So going one by one on those, the searcher is the component that identifies MEV's opportunities. So you're looking at transactions coming from DeFi protocols, different types of arbitrage, and identifying an interesting opportunity that you can capture, and submitting those to a specific block builders. Then the block builders receive those transactions and assembles a block in a following certain profitability algorithm, right? There is not a fixed algorithm to do this. There is a criteria what makes a block valid, and as long as you respect that, you can structure it in different ways. And then the block builders pass those blocks to the relayers, and the relayers takes the headers of the blocks and send it to the validator. So the validators ultimately need to trust relayers, right? And validator clients in proof of stake blockchains today work with different relayers. So, and obviously the validators, the role is you take those blocks and propose a valid block to the network, and if you propose an invalid block, you can get penalized on different ways, because if not, that allows you to span the network using different mechanisms. So today there are different relayers that are notable. The most famous one, obviously, is Flashbot, but that accounts for a large percentage of the transactions being processed in Ethereum post-merge. And then there are others like Blocknative and Bloxroute that are quite interesting, but by and large, in Ethereum, Flashbot sort of dominates. Now, when you look at the MEV ecosystem today, there are MEVs in many blockchains, but Ethereum is certainly the most competitive ecosystem, particularly because Flashbot has sort of democratized this, right? And for a while, the core DeFi activity was in Ethereum. Now it's competitive and others. So there is a lot of MEV in BNB chain. There is a lot of MEV in Cosmos. There is MEV in Solana and things like that. But the technologies for capturing those that MEV is far more advanced on Ethereum. The clients for capturing that MEV than in other blockchains. So this is where we're at today. We are with MEV Boost. That's a current state of the art of MEV client implementations. So where are we going? And this is a part of the presentation that I feel it might uncover some new ideas. So for some reason, in the last few months, there has been a lot of debates about the future of MEVs, and there has been some interesting ideas, particularly from Flashbots, that have come to light that are quite interesting. So I would like to explore three of those ideas. This architecture called SUAVE, this new thing called MEV Share that just got posted a few days ago, and this idea of combining MEV, what is called trusted execution environments, to propose to enable better privacy, because obviously, you know, the minute you can obfuscate all this MEV communication, you can be more efficient, right, and allow prevent bad actors from intervening in the normal supply chain. Now, why do we need more new MEV ideas? So the challenge that the current MEV Boost type of architecture has is that it's prone to block builder centralizations. So today, you know, if Flashbots was a for-profit, organization, they by far dominate the MEV ecosystem. So it's highly centralized towards Flashbot. They see the bulk of the order flows being processed in the Ethereum ecosystem. And then therefore, if we extrapolate that to other blockchains, the way this architecture works is parties that are able to host validators in multiple blockchains, they have a monumental advantage to capture MEV cross-chain compared to other parties that don't have that capability. So these are two dimensions that are pushing the current MEV, that are sort of centralization vectors of the current MEV architecture. So a lot of the efforts of people working on MEV is to create new angles for decentralizing the MEV supply chain even more. And here, some of the new ideas. This is highly complex, so feel free to ask questions at any given time. The most important one of the three is this thing called SUAVE. I mean, this is pretty obvious that it's going to get built, and there are already efforts. So the idea of SUAVE is to create a new blockchain, not a smart contract blockchain, but a sort of decouple the mempool and builder and block builder role from the different blockchains. So we could have a single blockchain in which you have the different mempools that are used for all the other chains. So obviously, this is going to enable cross-chain MEV. So how does this work? So this is sort of the architecture that the Flashbot teams propose for SUAVE. It has three main components. What is called the preference environment, that is this idea in which parties can express their preferences, almost like an order book type setting, right, of the type of transactions they're interested in. It has the execution market, right, that allows you to find the best execution for those preferences, and then it has an architecture for decentralizing block building. So those are the three components of it. The universal preference environment, which is by far the most important one of the three, this is a blockchain and a mempool that is optimized for expressing preferences, meaning traits that capture MEV opportunities. So you can say, I'm interested on transactions from Uniswap over this value, and I'm willing to pay this much. Those type of things. So eventually, you can see that dApps will communicate with this UP environment to express different preferences, and that's what the searchers will use to aggregate those preferences in the form of transactions and send it to the block builder. Then you have what is called the optimal execution market. That is a network of components are called executors that are listening to the mempool, to all those preferences, and then sequencing those in a way that guarantee the best execution. This is sort of what the matching engine does in traditional order book type of technologies. And then the final one is the block building. Once you have the preference structuring transactions, you need to build a specific block. And then the way that Flashbot is thinking about this is those block builders will receive the preference in an encrypted way, and similar to what you do in MEV Boost, and following certain algorithm, assemble the block based on the recommendation from the best execution from the execution market. So this is pretty obvious that it's going to get built. There is even a roadmap, right? And the idea here, when you think about this, and I even wrote an article about this point, is moving financial intelligence to the MEV layer. So today, a lot of the financial intelligence happen obviously in dApps and things like that, but now it feels that you're going to have, with the preference environments, you can architect traits with certain logic below the dApp layer, which is kind of interesting, and it could go in all sorts of different ways. So it's interesting it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But then, because you're decoupling the mempool and the block building role, This is by far is going to enable cross-chain MEV, because now there is a single mempool in which all this you can express preferences. One area that I'm very interested on, and we're going to talk about it at the end, is this idea of MEV-aware validators. So validators today are very dumb, and they don't have any financial intelligence. I think validators could do better to identify MEV opportunities. So the guys from Jump are working on a validator client for Solana that has a lot of these principles in mind, and I think more things can be done. And finally, this type of architecture, if open source, which it seems like it's going to be open source, is going to enable a lot of alternative to Flashbots in other blockchains. So this is the first idea, and the one that is pretty clear that is going to get built. The second idea is this thing that just got published a few days ago. It's called MEV Share. And the goal of MEV Share is to come up with an architecture in which the users receive part of the MEV opportunity. So obviously, for the users are the ones that are ultimately paying for MEV, right? A deposit transaction pays certain fees, and their part of that goes to the validator. So the way this idea works, it introduces a new component called the matchmaker. And the matchmaker receives a number of user preferences, right, what they would like to see, and a number of opportunities from the searchers, and mixes the two, right? So they, in a way that the user receives some value, and that's what ultimately gets sent to the block builder. So the workflow works something like this. I simplify this a little bit because it's a ton of steps, but obviously everything starts with the user that sends the transactions to the matchmaker, and in those transactions there will be a series of privacy preferences, and the searchers, meaning the ones that are identifying the MEV opportunities, will be listening to those from those preferences from the matchmaker. Then the searchers will do what they do, that is, will identify the MEV opportunities, but then it will include, using a privacy technique, some hints that will tell you how those transactions can match the user preferences, and then that gets sent back to the matchmaker that combines the user preference, the privacy preference of the user with the transactions in a way that the user can receive part of the MEV. It builds a block, and it proposes a block, and it gets sent to the block builder. So this is still in a very early stage. It's proposed on the Flashbot forum. It's getting some traction. So it's an interesting idea. It seems quite complex to implement. And obviously, it's taking value away from the validators and back to the users. So you can probably see that there's going to be some pushback there. So what are implications of these things? So again, it moves more financial intelligence. We continue this trend in which intelligence that was at the app layer is moving to the infrastructure level. But then you can see dApps now becoming matchmakers, in which they capture the preference of the users, and they have a say on how those blocks are structured. The same thread with MEV validators and Flashbot competitors also apply here. Then the third idea should be number 3, number 2, is this idea of MEV and privacy. This is another one that I believe is going to get built as part of SUAVE. So the most interesting thing is that the Flashbot teams has been working on this idea of combining their MEV client with this technology called Trusted Execution Environments, TEs. So TEs are essentially enclave of private computation in which you can execute computations in a way that privacy is almost guaranteed. So Intel has a lot of technology here, and there's a ton of vendors that provide TEs environments. So that link that you're seeing here is an open source implementation of the MEV Get client in this TE called SGX. And essentially what they're trying, what the experiment is here, is can you put all that MEV computation in a trusted environment so there are no hacks, nobody can it's completely isolated and completely safe. These TE environments are designed for very basic computation and very small memory and things like that. So There's some challenges there, but alternatively, there's some ideas on the table of combining MEV with secure multi-party computation, zero-knowledge proof, privacy techniques that will allow to have complete secure communication between the different components of the MEV supply chain. I'm pretty sure that one of this is going to get implemented with the SUAVE client. So what you're going to see here, if that gets implemented, is something like zero-knowledge MEV, right, or privacy-first flashbot client and things like that. So those are sort of the developments that we think are super interesting in the MEV market. SUAVE is going to get implemented. This idea of MEV share, you know, quite interesting, getting some traction, and this architecture of combining trusted execution environments with MEV. Now, how does this translate into the current market? Obviously, the number one use case of MEV is for high frequency trading opportunities in the crypto space. So we're living in a unique time in the market. So the level of dislocation in this market has created a completely asymmetric environment, and now there is a massive amount of opportunities to make money based on those asymmetries. So the way that you should think, I mean, this is a very basic thing, but the way that you should think about the relationship between high frequency trading on chain and MEV is sort of MEV is a supporter for HFT algorithms, right? Like part of those most HFT algorithms is identify the arbitrage by monitoring different forms of mempools or transaction lists and things like that, and that's obviously a form of MEV. So there are all sorts of ideas that are quite interesting here to consider. This is not super futuristic stuff. This is things that some of these are on the works, and there's an open source initiative in this area. So, for instance, this idea of improving MEV relays is what interesting, right? So today, the one algorithm that we use to that relayers, remember relayers are the component that connects to the validators, right? Most of them, they just follow a financial logic to orchestrate the blocks. Well, there might be some more interesting ways to do that is not ordering by payment, but you can have different distributions to different dApps and different type of addresses and different validators, all sorts of different things that it could improve sort of the intelligence of MEV relays. Obviously, as I said, Flashbot stands alone and Ethereum stands alone as the place where all MEV innovation is happening. I think it's time that we see more active MEV client Flashbot competitors for non-Ethereum chains, right? Like there have been attempts to this, but when you compare the technology in other blockchains to Flashbots, is really the difference is very obvious. Then this is there is a ton of opportunity on this, right? Cross-chain MEV is real. It exists today. MEV is something that happens at a blockchain level, but there is very few initiatives to try to identify cross-chain MEV. So you can think about two client searchers that have access to two mempools, right, on different chains, and they orchestrate the opportunities based on the arbitrage logic between the two. So the way one of the ultimate representations of this is building a Flashbot-like auction market for these cross-chain MEV opportunities. Then a variation of this, right? So an expansion of this idea, if you like, is CeFi-DeFi MEV, right? This is the ultimate MEV, right? Like the MEV that captured the most value today is CeFi-DeFi arbiters by and large, right? So if you can model MEV searchers that are doing arbitrage between what's happening on chain and centralized exchanges and bundle the transactions based on certain logic, by definition, that's not even highly competitive because not many other searchers will have the centralized logic, and the asymmetries on the market are such that provides a multiple of more MEV compared to just on-chain MEV. So this is an interesting idea. Then if we keep going down the stack, you have this idea of MEV protocols, right? Like you could have AMMs, lending protocols that incorporate the MEV logic as well, the way they send transactions to the network. Certainly, if MEV share gets implemented, this idea of the matchmaker is going to get incorporated into protocols. And an interesting one is MEV-aware validators, right? Validators that incorporate the MEV logic as well as the logic to propose blocks to the network. As I mentioned, the Jump Crypto team is working on a Solana, on a validator client in Solana that it incorporates some of these principles. So these are ideas that I think are worth exploring. And that's all I got. So to do a quick summary, today we're on the MEV Boost client, right? That's the latest iteration of MEV clients in the Ethereum network. The three main ideas that are on the table for the evolution of this are SUAVE, MEV search, and the integration with trusted execution environments and the current market conditions. And has opened a ton of opportunities for HFT-based MEV. Before I go to questions, the next webinar in 3 weeks, we're going to be talking. I mentioned that we launched the first alpha release of the DeFi Risk Radar. So we're going to be taking you through a practical best practices of how to manage risk in lending protocols. So we're going to be deep diving into a lot of the signals and things like that for protecting capital when you're in lending protocols such as Compound, Aave, Euler, and others. You can see the link in the webinar chat, so please register. And with that, I would like to go to Q&A. I know it was a very technically deep session, but feel free to type the questions in the Q&A. So there is one attendee who is asking if it's profitable to take the Flashbot MEV to transactions. In percentage, that will be a gain on it. I'm not sure. Obviously, that requires some statistical modeling, but today the MEV logic is very simple, right? You identify an opportunity that says $100, and you say, I'm going to pay 90. I think more sophisticated logics like that, in which you aggregate multiple transactions, things like that, are definitely possible. Which ones are more interesting than others? I don't know, but I mean, I believe that there's many iterations that you can do on this. Do you know any project trying to capture the opportunity on the CeFi DeFi MEV? Not as an open source project, but I know different asset managers are working on ideas like that. So it's definitely a very, very active opportunities in the market. Any useful resources to start learning on MEV? I mean, to me, the Flashbot's website is great. There is an MEV conference that it takes place every year, and the videos of the last conferences are in YouTube. I believe it's probably on the Flashbot channel. I mean, amazing sessions, very, very, very deep technically. So it's probably a good resource for that. Any more questions? I don't see any other questions. So, oh yeah, so okay, so somebody asked for the link to Flashbot, so it was posted there. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for joining this this webinar, and I hope to see you in 3 weeks to talk about lending risk in DeFi lending. Thank you very much.